Welcome back everybody, my name is Nick930 and this is my final review for the recently released Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Call of Duty Modern Warfare is the 16th entry to the mainline Call of Duty franchise, and the 8th title created by Infinity Ward. Unlike their most recent entry, Modern Warfare aims to be a return to form for the long stagnating series, with a more grounded setting, interesting new gameplay mechanics, redesigned multiplayer, and a much different campaign experience. It's certainly still a Call of Duty game, but having just played through every entry in the series over the course of the past month, it's abundantly clear that this Modern Warfare is one of the biggest shakeups to the series in over a decade. So, to help break it all down, let's first start by taking a spoiler-free look at the story. Though, before we do so, I wanted to clear up some confusion that I noticed with my comparison video last week. While this game is called Call of Duty Modern Warfare, it has almost nothing to do with the original trilogy of Modern Warfare titles. There are some recurring characters, but the plot is completely different, almost like an alternate timeline. In this Modern Warfare, most of the action takes place in and around a fictional Middle Eastern country called Urzikstan, as players help a group of rebels push out invading Russian forces, in exchange for information about a terrorist organization believed to be in possession of chemical weapons. Like many of the older Call of Duty games, players assume the role of multiple characters, including Garrick in the British SAS and Alex of the CIA. This allows for more variety, as the story will shift between these two characters between missions, with the British missions focusing more on covert infiltration, while the American side has more large-scale battles in Middle Eastern war-torn cities. And while this sounds a lot like Call of Duty 4, the pacing of the missions is completely different. Missions now include much more dialogue sequences before you get into any of the action. This allows for much greater character development and a more meaningful story, something that will surely divide fans of the series. Now, without spoiling anything major, I will say that this Modern Warfare is one of the more mature entries to the Call of Duty series. Events depicted share a lot of similarities with real-world events happening in Syria over the past couple years, with the Americans helping rebel allies in exchange for information and assistance neutralizing a terrorist cell. Because of these more mature topics, many of the scenes throughout the game depict scenes of mass genocide and brutal violence, including a mass shooting in a western city, chemical warfare, and suicide bombings. It's a much more believable and modernized narrative than the past games, and one that I believe has been executed in a respectful way, albeit at the expense of the high-intensity action that the franchise has always been known for. Now, as far as the connection to the original games go, the new Modern Warfare appears to be a fresh reboot for the trilogy, with a number of reoccurring characters like Captain Price, in addition to an exhaustive amount of fan service, including mentions of other key characters, references to similar events, and plenty of repurposed dialogue from Call of Duty 4. It's an exciting premise to return to the story, and after completing the roughly 5-hour campaign, I'm definitely excited to see what's in store for the sequel. But the gameplay offers an even greater change to the experience. Like I said before, the pacing in the single-player campaign is much slower than the past Call of Duty games, with smaller scale conflicts and higher lethality. Weapons feel more powerful and satisfying, thanks in part to the incredible sound design and reworked recoil animation. And the movement, while still boots on the ground, feels more fluid and responsive. What's interesting though is that the mission designs offer very few over-the-top action sequences. In fact, a good chunk of the action in the campaign takes place late at night with night vision goggles and small-scale skirmishes. There's about 3 missions throughout the campaign that feature very small, close-quarters environments with reduced movement speed and a heavy emphasis on scripted AI in each room of a small building. To make this more believable, players can now interact with doors, and can either slowly move them open, or recklessly kick them open to catch enemies off guard. Players now need to much more carefully pick their targets, as environments now include balanced amounts of both hostile and civilian NPCs. Some characters that look like civilians will even reach for guns, requiring players to think on their feet and engage when necessary. There's still some old-school Call of Duty action mixed in, including a level that feels eerily similar to the format of Charlie Don't Surf, but they aren't quite as common, and these small-scale infiltration missions and more narrative-driven experiences round out the rest of the campaign. In terms of the controls, Modern Warfare plays mostly the same. Players will still move alongside an AI unit and engage groups of scripted enemies, either holding a defensive position or attacking key objectives, though there are a few new game mechanics like the tactical sprint that allow players to press the sprint button a second time to move even faster, at the cost of slower response time. Players can once again slide on the ground into a crouch, and can now mount their weapon around corners or on cover, greatly improving weapon stability like an impromptu bipod. And then of course, there's the multiplayer experience. Just like the campaign, Call of Duty Modern Warfare's multiplayer is designed very differently than the past several games, with new playlist types, new balancing, reworked map direction, and a change up to the progression and customization systems. So first, let's talk about the progression and customization. Like before, Modern Warfare allows players to rank up their profile and unlock new weapons, perks, and killstreak rewards to use in-game. Weapons range from assault rifles, SMGs, and shotguns, to light machine guns and sniper rifles. Though, unlike past games, Modern Warfare allows players to equip up to 5 different attachments to both their primary and secondary weapons without having to sacrifice any other loadout customization. This allows for an unprecedented amount of player freedom and personalization, and can finally be tweaked mid-match instead of having to return to the lobby like before. There's an insane amount of attachments available to choose from, though because each attachment is unlocked by ranking up that particular weapon with acquired kills, I feel as though I was stuck using the same weapons for longer periods of time. It was difficult to force myself to switch off the highly effective M4A1 in favor of a new assault rifle, simply because of the huge handicap I'd be giving myself. And based on the number of M4s I found lying around dead bodies in-game, I feel like either lower weapon ranking requirements or shared weapon attachment unlocks may encourage players to try out different weapons more. Perks handled mostly the same as before, with 3 different categories to choose from, but the more powerful perks from the past games like the popular Dead Silence are now part of a new gameplay mechanic called Field Upgrades. Field Upgrades can be used infinitely throughout the match, but can only be used temporarily before needing a cooldown. This feels like a great way to balance out the more powerful perks, though I would like an option to equip specific field upgrades per loadout, instead of needing to change it out every time I want to change up my playstyle. Killstreaks also make a return, and as the name would suggest, once again require kills instead of just objective scores, though players that prefer the score streak design can equip a perk to change this. The killstreaks themselves don't innovate much. There's your standard UAVs, sentry turrets, care packages, and airstrikes. But there are a few new ones like the white phosphorus attack that blankets the level in a thick volatile fog that stuns the enemy team and deals burning damage over time. Other customization options include a few pre-made character models that, for whatever reason, have small intro cutscenes when you first view them, and a ton of other cosmetic unlocks like skins, charms, and player cards. Next, let's talk about the different game modes. As usual, Modern Warfare features all the classic team-based modes like TDM, Domination, and Search and Destroy, but also introduces some new modes, including a version of standard maps that require night vision, a competitive 2v2 mode called Gunfight, and the large-scale 64-player Ground War. Gunfight pits 2 players against each other in small arenas with identical weapon loadouts and no respawn. This mode offers some great competitive action, as the focus turns away from trying to score kill streaks and rank up weapons, and towards more of a focus on adaptive teamwork and genuine skill to come out on top. Meanwhile, Ground War goes the complete other direction with it, and offers huge expansive environments with upwards of 64 players fighting over several different control points. To help cross the terrain more effectively, Ground War also offers some drivable vehicles, including an APC light tank, quad bikes, and even a small transport helicopter, useful for gaining a high vantage point for a squad of snipers. This mode naturally shares a lot in common with Battlefield, but is also not the first time the Call of Duty series has attempted something of this scale, with the multiplayer in older titles like United Offensive and Call of Duty 3 offering a very similar experience, albeit in a World War II setting. But unlike those older titles, this Ground War just doesn't feel like it works with the fast-paced action of the more modern Call of Duty experience. While combat certainly feels great and is fluid, the vehicles feel really stiff and awkward to use, and the lack of environmental destruction for smaller objects like trees and poles makes them frustrating to maneuver through the streets. Also, a lot of the older features from Call of Duty 3, like class abilities, don't make a return. The reason Battlefield works the way it does is because the different classes are forced to work together to make traversing the large environments tolerable. This mode just doesn't feel like it's built around working as a team. Sure, you can spawn in your squad member and shoot at the same nearby targets, but it just feels like a major step back from more modern large-scale war games. Ground War also allows for player kill streaks, only making the action more chaotic, as automated turrets, helicopters, and airstrikes make any movement outside the central structure suicidal. But an even bigger issue is the restriction on party sizes eligible to join the mode. Because squads in Ground War are composed of only 4 players, it's impossible to join with a larger party size into a Ground War match. Instead, we found that we had to split into groups of 4 and join on each other's game in progress, with no guarantee that we'd end up on the same team together. This, along with the lack of a join-in-progress queue system, just makes the mode more of a hassle than it should be. Meanwhile, the standard multiplayer mode still feels great, with some intense close matches and solid feel to the combat. The only thing keeping it from feeling perfect are some fairly major weapon balancing issues and issues with the level designs. The balancing in this game needs some serious work. After a week or so of playing, it's especially clear that the 725 shotgun, aka the Olympia, is beyond overpowered. This 2-shot buckshot has way too long of an effective killing range, making it unstoppable in many of the close-quarter environments. The level designs are the other major issue here, mainly the way the game registers a spawn flip. Because of the larger level designs and increased player count for these larger levels, the spawns don't seem to properly swap, turning matches into one team being completely destroyed in their spawn for 10 minutes straight. This is especially noticeable in Euphrates Bridge and Piccadilly, where teams are frequently pushed back into spawn and the winning team is able to score easy spawn kills using sniper rifles and kill streaks. Either these maps need to have a reduced max player count, or the spawn areas need to provide significantly more cover and alternative routes. So, the map spawns and the weapon balancing are currently the only major problems I have with the game. Everything else looks and plays great, and thanks to the new full cross-platform compatibility, PC players no longer have to worry about empty servers if they decide to buy the game a week late, an issue that has plagued Call of Duty's PC releases for the past decade. And then finally, there's the cooperative Spec Ops mode. Just like Modern Warfare 2, players can work together to overcome challenging missions tailored specifically for cooperative play. But other than that very generic description, this version of Spec Ops plays nothing like the older games. First off, there's 3 different Spec Ops modes to choose from: Standard Missions, Spec Ops Classic, and the PS4 exclusive Survival mode. In the Standard Missions, 4 players are dropped into a massive semi-open-ended environment filled with an endless supply of enemy combatants. These enemies range from standard infantry and juggernauts to technicals, helicopters, and tanks. While fighting through these enemies, teams are responsible for completing several different objectives, often involving extracting data from servers or destroying high-value targets. While a pretty straightforward premise, the endless supply of enemies and their increased variety and difficulty makes this one of the most brutally challenging modes in the game. Players need to carefully coordinate their weapon loadouts and perks to maximize their effectiveness, and work as a team to stay alive. Unlike the multiplayer, Spec Ops gives players special power-ups called munitions that allow players to call in things like airstrikes and juggernaut suits to push back. While munitions can be chosen at the deployment, more munitions can be found in small boxes all throughout the large environments, and players will need to carefully coordinate their munitions with each other to bypass the more challenging sections. Unique to Spec Ops missions are player roles that grant both an active and passive ability. Roles are extremely important and can provide the team with much needed relief. The medic, for example, can occasionally use an active ability called Team Revive that revives every downed teammate instantly, and can also revive all players more quickly by hand. Mix and matching different roles, loadouts, and munitions makes this mode and its 4 distinct missions highly replayable, and it's a definite challenge, even for the most seasoned groups of players. Spec Ops Classic, on the other hand, feels like a major missed opportunity. Despite the name, Spec Ops Classic feels nothing like the old 3-star missions of Modern Warfare 2 or Modern Warfare 3. Instead, there seems to be only a single level that borrows the sniper mission environment from the single player, where players need to hold off against a few waves of enemy reinforcements and then escape by helicopter. Players cannot choose their loadout, and the team roles are not implemented, though munitions can still be found throughout each wave and used to resupply and call in air support. And then there's the PS4 timed exclusive Survival mode, that plays similarly to the Survival mode from Modern Warfare 3. Overall, the Spec Ops mode is definitely worth checking out if you have a group of 4. Though the Spec Ops Classic mode is a huge disappointment, considering it only comes with 1 map, and players on the PC and Xbox will have to wait a full year before they can play the Survival mode, at which point Treyarch's new Call of Duty will probably be right on the horizon. Finally, let's talk about the presentation. As you've probably already noticed or discovered with my recent comparison for this title, Modern Warfare demonstrates a pretty significant leap forward technically for the Call of Duty series. Thanks to Infinity Ward's new engine, everything from the character models, animations, and lighting have seen a huge uptick in quality, providing for one of the best looking Call of Duty games to date. One of the most impressive technical achievements are the high quality cinematics between missions, that look near photorealistic. Unfortunately, these beautiful cutscenes are ruined by some consistent stuttering and audio sync issues on the PC that seem to be caused by the next level attempting to load in the background. The actual rendered visuals are impressive as well, with phenomenal animation work and excellent special effects, all with solid performance throughout. The only technical issues I ran into were occasional times where my game would minimize during gameplay, and an annoying shader installation process that seems to occur after every update to the game client. Still, in the grand scheme of things, these are fairly minor issues, and certainly can be fixed with additional patches in the future. Call of Duty Modern Warfare is the answer to nearly a decade of complaints from fans, asking the developers to do something different. While it's still the same old Call of Duty at its core, it offers a much more mature experience, with a campaign that covers more realistic events and doesn't rely as heavily on needlessly over-the-top action. The multiplayer certainly could use some work, particularly with weapon balancing and the design of the larger maps. But the new cross-platform play makes the experience finally available to play reliably for all players, regardless of platform preference. And the Spec Ops mode offers an extra challenge that will test your cooperative capabilities, while also hinting at a potential Battle Royale mode in the future. It's a massive package that delivers something for every type of player, and certainly feels like a high point for the series. And hopefully, the developers will continue to innovate like this moving forward. But what do you guys think? Did Call of Duty Modern Warfare meet your expectations? Let me know in the comments section. And if you want to learn more about Modern Warfare and the rest of the Call of Duty series, be sure to check out my full feature-length documentary on the franchise that covers everything from the development history, evolution of visuals, and all the changes that have been made over the years to the gameplay. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos posted every week.